Well, listen, today we have a special guest and someone who is near and dear to my heart that I've had a chance to perform with the National Speakers Association and who I met at the National Speakers Association. He's an amazing author and also an incredible musician. His name is Jim Cathcart, and he's an executive mentor, strategic advisor, motivational expert, sales consultant, entertainer, and the author of 20 books, including the Acorn Principles, Relationship Selling, which are international bestsellers. He's also a TEDx speaker who is in one of the top 1% of all TEDx with over 2 million views on his TEDx. He has been inducted into the Sales and Marketing Hall of Fame in 2012 in London and Paris, one of the top 30 sales gurus in 2020, listed among the top sales influencers in 2014, 15, 16, and 19. We don't know what happened in 17 and 18, but we'll come back to that. Voted top 5 sales and service speakers in 2010, 11, 12, 13, and 14, 5 years in a row. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to just introduce you to Jim Cathcart, just an all-around good guy. Jim, how are you doing, man?
Thank you, Gerald. You know what? After that intro, I can't wait to hear what I've got to say. I must be amazing.
So Jim, you've done a lot of things in your career. Tell us a little bit about how you got started, because I know that from our conversations, sitting down at dinner over at the National Speakers Association doing breaks, you share with me about your background and where you came from and the transformation that you went through that's really made the changes for you to be successful throughout your career.
Yeah, I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, and my dad was a telephone repairman. Mom was a housewife taking care of my sister and my invalid grandfather and grandmother. And I really never expected to do much or be much. I was an average student, actually a little below average. I had never been an athlete. So nobody was telling me, wow, you've got potential, or, hey, you should aspire to great things. So I figured I'd have an average life, be a nice guy. And whenever the statistical average for my gene pool hit the number, that's when I would die and get out of the way for somebody else. And then one day I was 26 years old. I was working at the Housing Authority, Urban Renewal Agency. I had something like 30 or 40 jobs, if you count all the summer jobs and things I did for pay. So I'd never had one particular career path. I'd been a banker, a warehouseman. I drove a truck. I was a bill collector. I'd done everything on earth. I was a bartender, worked in a grocery warehouse, driving a forklift and things like that, So I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I didn't have a college degree. I had 2 years college and then dropped out. I'd been in the Army and trained as a medic, and then I became a lieutenant. But they assigned me to a reserve unit with a really incompetent major in charge of it, who was intimidated and cowed by the sergeant major, old crusty sergeant major that ran the place. And so it wasn't an enjoyable experience. And at the end of my 6 years of reserve duty, I dropped out. So I was sitting at the Housing Authority in 1972, 26 years old. I'll save you the math. I was born in 1946. Now I'm 74. So 26 years old, I'm at the Little Rock Housing Authority. I'm 200 pounds. This is 146. So 50 pounds overweight, smoking 2 packs a day, never worked out. Didn't have any money in the bank. Didn't know anybody that had any money in the bank. And I'm an assistant to a guy who is not busy. I'm making $525 a month, and I report to Bob Moore, and Bob Moore doesn't need me. So I'm just sitting there doodling and daydreaming and reading books. And I read the Bible cover to cover at work in 3 months.
Wow.
And didn't neglect my job, because I didn't have any duties. And so I'm sitting there one day, and in the next room, there's a radio broadcast like your podcast. You know, it's just a short one though, and it's from Earl Nightingale, considered the dean of personal motivation. He was on 900 radio stations all over the world, and that day he said, "Now this was 1972 in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I remember verbatim what he said to this day, 50 years later." He said, if you will spend 1 extra hour each day studying your chosen field, in 5 years or less, you'll be a national expert in that field. Well, I thought, no, wait a minute. Hour a day, 5 days a week, 50, that's 1,250 hours over 5 years. Even I could become an expert at something if I did that. That makes good sense. I think I'll do it. But I didn't want to be an expert at urban renewal. And I didn't know what I wanted to be an expert at. So I thought about it for weeks. And then one day it hit me. I want to do what he does. Who? Earl Nightingale. Well, what does he do? I didn't know. I just knew it felt somewhere deep inside me like the right choice. So I thought, okay, I will spend an extra hour. Actually, I felt I was starting from behind. So I needed to spend sometimes 2 or 3 hours, but I'll spend many extra hours studying the field of personal development and ultimately learn to do what Earl Nightingale does. So I became, and I mean this in the textbook literal sense of this word, fanatical about the study of human development. I read all the classic books. Think and Grow Rich. This is first edition, okay? Let me just show you a handful of them. The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. The Magic of Thinking Big, David Schwartz. Sun Tzu, The Art of War, I read later. Zig Ziglar's See You at the Top hadn't been published yet. But I got it later and became good friends with Zig. Well, I started doing this and my world started changing because my mind started changing. Mm-hmm. I bought a big library of audio cassettes, remember cassettes, from Earl Nightingale's company, and listened to his message for 20 minutes at a time, 2 or 3 times a day, every day for 5 years. I knew the way I had been raised to think was not adequate to enable me to make a difference in the world, to matter. And I wanted to desperately. So I really focused on developing the habit of thinking differently, more positively, more open-mindedly, more innovatively or creatively, while being sure that I was becoming the kind of person, this is key, becoming the kind of person who would deserve the future I wanted. See, if you don't become an eligible receiver, you're not going to get the ball. And I had to make me worthy of somebody handing off to me success opportunities.
Right.
And it started paying off in a couple of years, and I became a trainer leading other people's courses. And then I started doing my own research, and ultimately I got to where I opened my own training business. And then I bought a psychological research firm, or part of one, and did some innovative research that became my book, The Acorn Principle. And as you mentioned earlier, now I've written and published 20 books worldwide. I've delivered 3,300 paid speeches, been president of the National Speakers Association, and every major award that they give to people in professional speaking, I've had the honor of receiving. I've been blessed, totally blessed.
Awesome.
Wow.
That's amazing. Wow. I just want to say, man, I can feel the energy and I'm motivated already just by the little bit I heard. I need to get my pencil out.
Well, luckily we're recording.
What did I tell you, Donald? I said, you're gonna like this interview. You're going to like talking with Jim.
Already, man. It's incredible. Well,
Thank
you know,
you.
I'm in the music business. I've been in the music business for 20 years, Grammy nominated producer. So I have some music questions for you.
Yeah, and
And
you've
one is,
also got some music creds. I love that.
so how has music influenced your career as a leader, writer, and an author? How has that played a big part?
Well, let me show you something. For those that are listening on audio only, I'm showing the wall of my office, which is also my studio, and
Wow.
it has guitars on it, some really nice guitars. I have always loved music, but I never played it, and I wasn't taught music as a child. We didn't have music in the home, so to speak. I had my records, but we didn't have, family sing-alongs or anyone in the family that was skilled at an instrument. So it was just mostly me and the Everly Brothers and Elvis and others on 45 RPM records at
Right.
first. And then when I got off to college, my roommate, Dan Clanton, played guitar. And he said, "Would you like to learn?" I said, "Absolutely." And so he taught me C, A, F, or C, A minor, F, and G7. Those were the 4 chords I first learned. And then of course, that enabled me to play about 35,612 songs.
Right. That's right.
And the first one I did was "Oh Donna," Richie Valens.
Yeah.
And then a number of others after that. But I just loved that. And I played along as a very street level, no skilled hacker for a while, and got to where I could do a few songs competently, but not impressively. And so I would play at parties in school. When I'd go to parties, I'd take a guitar. And then one time I was at a Steak and Ale restaurant in 1969 in Little Rock, Arkansas. And in the Jolly Ox pub, a friend of mine, Jim Cathcart, was playing and singing. And he said, "Hey, Jim, I'm going to take a break in a second. You want to play a couple songs?" And I thought, well, how cool is that? Yeah. And so I got up and sat on this bar stool with a spotlight on me, and I played Sound of Silence and something else. I don't remember what I played exactly. And at the end of my little mini set, Mike Stone, who was the bartender in managing the pub, he said, "Hey, come here. You looking for work?" And I said, "Well, what do you got in mind?" He said, "How about playing here a few nights a week?" So I did. And I played for $15 an hour, which was huge at the time.
Right.
Huge. I mean, that was a full gig, $15, and plus tips. And some nights I would make $70 or more, which was just world changing to me. And so I was considering, when I got married in 1970, do I go into music or do I pursue some other career? And I thought, no, I really need to make more money than music would afford me, because my plan had been to move to Nashville, get a day job anywhere, go to school and learn music, and then play gigs wherever I could in all my spare time, and then get discovered someday and become rich and famous. But then I got married, and I thought, you know what, I'll go into selling securities. So I studied for the exam and I passed it, and I sold mutual funds door to door to businesses, and struggled through 2 years of that, and gave up music professionally. Fast forward 40 years, emphasis 40. I'm in California. I've had a brilliant career as a professional speaker. I've, done all those things I mentioned a while ago. A friend of mine in California, my new home at the time, said, "Hey, we're having a hot August night party. Bring your guitar." And I thought, no, wait a minute. That's an album by Neil Diamond. So I got the album out, and I had a songbook for it. So I started learning some of those songs. And when I went to his party, I played a couple of them. And I said, okay, next one's at my house. So we had a guitar night at my house, and 20 plus people came over. And for 2 or 3 hours, I and they played and sang. And one of my friends said, "Hey, when are we going to take a break and just talk?" I said, "We're not. It's guitar night." He said, "But what?" I said, "Gary, I know you don't play guitar, but sorry, this is what I want to do." He said, "Okay, okay." Well, then Sherwood Country Club, which was where we lived in Thousand Oaks, California, said, "Hey, would you put on a guitar night for our members, our 600 members? Just have a special evening." And I said, "Yeah." And I called a friend with Guitar Center, which is headquartered there. And they donated for the evening a petting zoo of guitars worth over $110,000.
Wow.
I mean, some seriously great instruments. And the country club set up a beautiful stage with 6 mics on it. And we had all those guitars around and did an open mic. And my wife and my son and I, all 3 performed. And then between songs, others would get up and either join us or do solos. And it was awesome. And a woman walked up out of the audience at the end and said, "Jim, when are you going to come play at my nightclub, Bogies, over at Westlake Village Inn?" And I said, "I can't be there for 2 hours, but I'm ready." And she said, "Well, how about next week?" I ended up doing 4 years of happy hour music at Bogey's nightclub, and then went on to another place, did a wine bar and some other place. And now I've started incorporating it into my speeches. When I do a big seminar or a speech, I'll find a reason to bring in the guitar for a song just to make a point or to have some fun. And I've performed for thousands and thousands of people at a time in China and Asia and Poland and, all over the world. And it's just been glorious.
That is awesome.
That may be more answer than you were looking for. But
No, that's great. Yeah.
This is amazing, Jim. Both the connection business-wise, spiritual, the music here. I feel like we have to pull out our instruments and start having a great jam session here. You mentioned the acorn principle, one of the books that you wrote, among many. And I know you talked about the fact that to become a great acorn, you have to think like an oak. I like that. Very
Absolutely. Good. See, that's the whole point of this. That, by the way, it's St. Martin's Press, if anybody wants to look it up.
So to think like an oak and to become a great acorn, how do we?
Well, first off, let's assume for a minute, Chad, that all of us have within us the equivalent of a seed, like an acorn. Mm-hmm. And it holds the potential of what we're capable of being. Well, the beauty of us compared to an actual acorn is that we're not dependent on the environment. We can choose or shape or adapt our environment as we need it. And the potential that's in you and in me is different, but in many ways overlaps. There's a lot of similarity between people because we are, in fact, people. But you might be particularly suited for certain skills that are difficult for me and vice versa. So between the 4 of us today, we've got a really wide mix of potential skills and possibilities that are lying dormant in our acorns. Now, acorns that think like acorns remain squirrel food. They don't become mighty oaks. So thinking the way you have been will continue being like you have been. Today's thinking leads to today's results. So continue today's thinkings. I can tell your future. And it's not very impressive. But think like an oak, not like an acorn. Think of what you're capable of. Ask yourself what I call the daily question. And the daily question is this: how would the person I aspire to be, the person I want to be, the better, the more evolved, the more enlightened, the more fulfilled me, how would that person do the things I choose to do? Mm-hmm. So when you're thinking, how would the person I'd like to be do what I'm about to do? Then everything you do is addressed at a higher level. Okay. Hang on just a second. I've got a distraction here.
I'm just writing down this question, man. That's a great,
Yeah.
that's a great question.
Wow.
I'm back.
Good stuff.
So I hope that thinking makes good sense.
It does. Yeah.
That is an amazing
seeing yourself
question.
there already to a certain extent.
Say again.
I said it's kind of like seeing yourself there already.
Absolutely. Yeah. And not thinking, how would Donald do this except to get an example from Donald? The what would Jesus do version of,
Right.
that concept. What would Elvis do? What would, name your hero?
Right.
That kind of thinking is useful for role models.
Yeah.
But what you want to do is see yourself as an evolved future being that you think is realistically you, and say, how would the better me do this? It's like one day I was driving along in my car long ago. My son was little at the time. He's 49 now. And I really snapped his head off over something he said or did. And we were driving a long distance. And so I thought about what I had just done, and I didn't like it. And so I stopped the car, pulled over, and I said, Jimmy, come here. And I got out of the car and walked around to the side of the road. And he got out, not knowing whether he was getting in trouble or what. And he timidly approached me, and I said, I owe you an apology. What? I said, I really don't like the way I handled that back there, and I owe you an apology. I'm sorry. Oh, that's okay, Daddy. I said, no, it's not okay. I just want you to know that I was out of line, and I'm sorry. He said, okay. And we got back in the car and went on our way. Well, that's the kind of thing that is really abnormal in our world.
Yeah.
Parents don't do that. Authority figures don't do that. And if we're going to do things like that occasionally, which are needed occasionally, we got to be thinking like the better us. So how would the better me do this?
Yeah. Now it's a great framework for how to position yourself to think about where you're going, how to become to that next level.
Yeah.
And really, grow yourself and elevate your thinking up from where you are, but also realizing that to even begin to think even more like that, you have to take in new information, like you said, with the reading of the books and just constant. And I find it is where the more I learn and develop is the more I realize I don't know. And the more that I need, I need coaches and I need people around me who are experts in their areas.
Even today, I mean, here I am 74 years old arguably at the top of my profession. And I've hired coaches this year for thousands of dollars to walk me through a process and help me develop a better skill. And I'm constantly over my career, I've been constantly reaching out and hiring coaches and mentors and guides and skill trainers and so forth. I mean, not just specialists to do things, but people to teach me.
Yeah.
And if you look at the great performers, they always have coaches.
Yeah.
The best singers in the world have voice coaches still.
Yeah.
And same thing for other types of musicians.
Right.
And it made me think of something, this, how would the person I'd like to be? So let's say you're a budding musician and you get the opportunity to be on stage with a world-class performer, and you're as much in the spotlight as that performer, but you don't have the chops yet to keep up. But here you are, either blessed or cursed with the opportunity to be on camera with them.
Right.
Well, that happened to me not that many years ago. I was in Nashville at a recording studio just outside of town in Franklin, and they had a performance venue, and we were having a live performance. And it just so happened that John Oates of Hall & Oates was there that evening. And he got up on stage and was doing one of his signature tunes. And I was among the three other guys that were invited to join him on stage with guitar. One with drum, but the others with guitars. And so I got up there And we're all plugged in and we're facing the audience and the song is starting. And I realize that there are going to be some parts of this song that I'm not going to pull it off in a way that won't distract. How would the person I'd like to be, how would the professional musician, me, handle this moment of terror? I turned off the sound on my guitar. And I went along just like I was contributing 100%. And John was gracious enough not to say a word about it. And we had a great time. I've never told that before.
Well, it's interesting, just the whole idea. I think, and I'll make this point because I think it's really important, especially with young budding musicians or folks who are in music and trying to grow and develop themselves. And I remember hearing this from Victor Wooten. I got invited from Donald, told Gerald Veasley about me, and Gerald invited me to his bass boot camp, which I had never heard of. And so I went, and it was amazing. And Victor Wooten was like doing the master class, 5-time Grammy-winning bass player. I'm just like, oh my goodness, right?
Yeah.
Well, he talked about how he learned how to play, and his brother Reggie Wooten taught him. And when he started, he was 5 years old. And what he said was, it was like being a child with parents who talk to you as their child. Right? You're as a parent, you talk to your kids, you use your, you're the expert, you're the professional, you're the high paid, but you're talking to your child who has no skills in talking, but you talk to them like they are a professional. Yeah. And the child is trying to figure it out and make it work, and he's going to talk back. But it's because the child is talking to this professional at that level that he's able to then elevate his game over time to become a professional speaker, if you will.
Yeah, it's like playing tennis against somebody who's at a higher level than you.
Exactly. And the person who's the parent doesn't talk down to the child or talks about what he can't do. He just accepts where he's at, encourages him, and you develop that skill in doing it. And I just found that getting engaged with experts like Donald and Chad and yourself, it's allowed me to just be myself and realize that you guys have accepted me, allowed me to grow, and it's just opened so many doors in my life to be able to have, to work with Donald and to be able to do the different things I've had a chance to do. So I have a question with you because we're at a really interesting time in this world.
Okay.
And especially with the pandemic going on, and thank goodness we have the vaccines that are coming out. But obviously, even with all the vaccines, it's going to take probably a year or more just to get the whole country immunized or to a point where there's some kind of immunization or herd immunity with the vaccine process. So when you think about the many entrepreneurs and business owners and organizations that are having a really hard time right now during this pandemic, and many of them have closed their doors, standing in bread lines and just the challenges that they're facing, what advice would you give them with thinking about how you grew yourself, but knowing that they don't really have a lot of time, right, during this crisis? What advice would you give them to address the situation and even to prepare to become a success and to become better than they are?
One of the things that I've done this year in evolving myself is I've shifted from being a professional speaker in a keynote role primarily to being a mentor to small groups and to individuals. And I developed a program called startupagain.me. And I want to read you something from it, because this is what I do most of the time now is I coach people in the ways that you were just inquiring about. And here's what I wanted to share is what I call think and work like a startup. So if you're facing COVID restrictions and all these other, mutant circumstances, that are absolutely abnormal, what do? Well, first off, you got to stop thinking like used to be and start thinking like you were once when you were heading out on this path. But now you're in the position of, I do know now what I needed to know back then. Take your new knowledge and build on that, but think like a startup.
Got it.
Here's what that means. Think open-ended, zero-based. All things are on the table. Anything could be changed. I'm here to learn. Let's see what we can do. I know what the restrictions are. I know what the laws are, but how can I open up again and start up with a grand reopening, say January 1 of this year, or whenever you want to choose as your target date. Listen to anyone, learn from everybody, janitors, neighbors, passersby, experts. Show up curious wherever you go. Don't go tell people things, go learn things, go ask people things. Try everything, experiment, experiment, experiment. Failure is the practice necessary for success. Stay up late, show up early, skip the breaks, focus, focus, focus. Be blindly optimistic temporarily. Anything's possible. Not everything's possible, but anything's possible, okay? Any one thing. Work harder than you plan to or expected to. Do just one more thing before you quit for the day. Try, experiment until you succeed. Be willing to fail often. Do damage control where necessary. Change target customers, maybe a different target. Change marketing methods, change who, what, where, when, why, how you do what you do. Seek coaches and mentors. Listen to critics, even when you don't like them, even when they're really nasty people. You don't have to accept what they say, but you better hear it. It might be true. Reflect daily, because without reflection, there's no real learning. Right. It's not what you know that counts. It's what you understand and apply. That's what counts. Do it now. If you see a need, don't plan to do it, just do it. Get it done. Be alert always for new talent. Who else could I connect with? New tools, training, time savers. Be willing to change anything and everything. Be willing to trust, but cut your losses early when trust is broken. When you're aligning with others, meet the parents, because you're marrying your mother-in-law. Someday down the road, that's who your spouse is going to be, right? So meet the parents, and that's true in business partnerships and so forth. And make time to have fun, stay healthy and rested, and make time for illness. If you don't take time to stay healthy and happy and flexible and creative and well-adjusted, you will be forced to take time for illness.
Right.
Because, mental, physical, family, social, spiritual, career, financial, emotional, which one's most important? The one that's been neglected. Because whichever one you've neglected so that you could feed the others, sooner or later will boldly step forward and say, okay, my turn. Everybody else sit down. Right? Yep. You'll have a relationship crisis, a physical crisis, a financial crisis, a whatever crisis, if you don't take time to address all of those needs.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's excellent advice. That's excellent advice. Well, we're just going to do one more round of questions here.
Let's keep going all day. I'm having fun.
Because I want to respect your time and the other guys' time and the things that we have going on. But Don, I'll let you go.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as you were talking about all the different things, I was evaluating myself and looking at the areas that I need to work on. And one was do it now. That's a big one for me. I think that's a big one for a lot of people. And during this season of COVID, as musicians, what we have to do, we had to reinvent ourselves. I'm doing more remote recording than I've ever done before, because that's where I am. So it's a great time to learn. And it put me in a situation where I had to look at some things outside the box that I never looked at before. So when I hear you talk about these things, I think one of the big things is being motivated. Like, what is some of the tools that are out there to motivate us to keep going? Not through this time, but just period. What advice would you give on that? Being motivated of how to, during COVID and in these times when we're just like, oh man, it just seems like so much is going on. What advice would you give on motivation?
You're playing right into my hands. That's why I got up there for a second. Check this out.
There it is.
Self-motivation handbook.
Oh yeah, I got to get that.
I've got 336 ideas that are each 1 minute in length. Okay. 1 minute long, 336 ideas of how to motivate yourself and others.
Awesome.
And the subtitle of this is Get Yourself to Do What Needs to Be Done When You Don't Feel Like Doing It Yet.
Which is a big problem. Right?
Isn't that the truth? And what I've found is, you notice on the cover, running shoes. Years ago, I was 50 pounds overweight and out of shape, and I wanted to be physically fit. So I said, all right, what do I need to do? Well, obviously exercise and eat well, but I couldn't get myself to eat well because every time I got some beautiful diet that was wonderfully scientifically perfect for me, I wasn't motivated to do it. So it just felt like work and it didn't look pleasant at all. So I thought, well, what could I do? What could I get myself to do? Well, I could get myself to cut out white sugar. Just white sugar, that's all, for a long period of time, right? Not for a stated like 6-week diet, but just eliminate refined white sugar because there are plenty of sweet things you can eat to replace it anyway. So I did that. And I found that I could do that pretty easily after the first problem area, figuring out how. And then I started eliminating animal fat. And, you get 2 or 3 of these things eliminated, like white flour, refined white flour, animal fat, and refined white sugar. Well, dang, that's the problem area of 99% of the diets in the world anyway.
Right.
So I did those. And everything else, I could eat as much as I want. I could sit and eat barbecue all day long, as long as it didn't have refined white sugar in it. Okay. But I didn't abuse the privilege. I actually started losing weight. And then I knew I needed to exercise, but I couldn't get myself to want to do it. So I thought, what can I do? I can get myself to commit to put on my running shoes and walk outside and touch the curb, period. Well, that's not going to get you fit. No, but it's going to put me in a position where I have to make a second choice. Go for a walk or a run or don't.
Right.
So I said, okay, here's my rigid commitment, unwavering commitment to myself. First off, I will every day, rain, shine, freezing, hot, doesn't matter. Every day, sometime during the day, I will put on my running shoes and walk out to the curb. Okay.
Awesome.
And I found that I did. I could get myself to do that. And most days I would go for a little walk, a few blocks. And then I got to where I could jog a little bit. And then I got to where I could jog a lot more. And then I could run a mile, which was huge for me. And then ultimately got to the point where I was running 5 miles several days a week. And the weight was just dripping off of me. And I got in shape for the first time in my life at around age 30.
Wow.
And I've been in shape, good shape ever since. And as a matter of fact, the peak of my fitness, starting at age 30, peak of my fitness was at age 62.
Wow.
At age 62, I hit 28 personal bests running mountain trails in California. And then one morning I passed out on the trail. And after about 28 minutes into the run, I got dizzy and I fainted when I stopped.
Yeah.
And when I revived, I thought, wow, well, I still got time to make a good time on this trail run, but maybe I should go back to the house. And when I went to the doctor and the doctor checked me over, he said, you're in really good shape. I said, that's not why I'm here. He said, oh, well, the reason you fainted was you've got an electrical problem in your heart called a left bundle branch block. It's a nerve branches. And I said, blockage? He said, no, it's electrical. I said, well, how do I fix it? He said, you don't. It's not fixable as far as we know. I said, well, what can I do? And he said, pacemaker? I said, get away from me. No, I'm not ready to put a tube up my nose and get a walker and become old. He said, no, you can run marathons and lift weights and play rock and roll with a pacemaker. Well, I got a pacemaker.
Oh, wow.
They put it in that year. And it's been in there ever since. I've never even had a hiccup.
Wow.
I've even had it replaced once, which is what they do when the battery is expiring.
Yeah.
And the doctor, every time I go in, he says, "You're unbelievable." He said, "You're in such good shape that sometimes your heart doesn't even use the pacemaker." He said, "So congratulations." And it's so, you know, even when you think you've got your handle on everything, you have those moments. And Gerald and I were talking about this earlier, you know, where everything is outside your control and you just got to do whatever it takes to get back to that point.
Yeah.
So what's the key to motivation is the first step. If the first step is open the envelope or step over near the exercise equipment or whatever it happens to be, you know, cancel your reservation at the ice cream parlor.
Right.
Something, just take that action and the rest of it will more than likely follow.
Yeah.
Great advice.
So real quick follow-up. How many push-ups do you do a day now, Jim?
Well, I'm only 74, so I do 100 push-ups a day, and I did 100 this morning. Now, I can't do them nonstop. I have to do 70 push-ups and then go back on my knees and let my, you know, catch my breath for 10 breaths and then do the other 30. But I have not missed a day. Now, think of this. This started October 23rd, 2016. I was challenged by a friend to do 22 a day for 22 days in honor of the returning veterans that were having PTSD problems and committing suicide.
Right.
And so I said, I'll do that, but not 22 at a time. So I did 88 the first day and did them in sets of 22. And the second day I did 100 and whatever. And then I said, well, I can do 100 in a day if I space them apart. Yeah. So I'm going to do 100 for 10 days, 30 days, a year. I've not missed a day. Now, let this sink in. Since October 23rd, 2016.
That's amazing. Wow.
Thank you. Yeah. But I never commit to the 100 push-ups. I commit to getting down in push-up position. And I know that I could do 10 and then go eat ice cream and then do 10 later in the day and get my 100 in that way. But what happens is when I'm down in that position, I start pumping them out and I find, well, this isn't so hard.
Right.
Okay, I'll do 20. Well, 20 went by pretty fast. So let's, you know, like this morning, I was going to do 30 and then do this show and then later do the rest of them. I did all 100.
You know, Jim, it's funny you say that. I struggle with my weight probably throughout my entire life. And then early last year, 2019, I discovered pickleball. And I've become completely addicted, craziness addicted with pickleball. I squeeze about almost at least three hours a day, sometimes 8 days a week, just playing pickleball, which helps similar to your story.
That's a lot of exercise. And pickleball is tennis for grown-ups. Yeah.
But I want to segue to something different.
Okay.
The focus of my business is helping my clients with every aspect of what I call web presence. And from my perspective, web presence falls into three categories: the strategy of the internet and the business, what I call remarkable content, and marketing initiative and strategies.
Yes.
I want to focus for a second on the content piece. I've observed some of the top thought leaders in the world, and what have become apparent and obvious to me, the best of the best in the world, the top of thought leadership, which obviously I rank you among them, are prolific publishers of remarkable content, and they don't stop creating content, whether it's books and podcasts and videos. If you look at yourself, Marshall Goldsmith, and so many others, they constantly create content. Yet the entrepreneurs that want to strengthen their thought leadership, want to increase that, really struggle with how to do so. You just, in today's session, you pulled out books that you've written and talked about the new thing you just worked on this year, which I admire in astonishment. Can you talk a little bit about the process? What goes through your mind when you create remarkable content? How do you put it all together? And where are most of your amazing ideas come from?
Thank you so much. The answer is different for different stages along the way. When I started out, I was learning still aggressively, like 90% learning, 10% thinking original. And now it's more like, I don't know, but it's a higher percentage on the original thinking side. So at first, I was listening to Earl Nightingale and finding ways to say what he was saying as I understood it, to put it in my own words instead of regurgitating his only. Um, I was not trying to steal his content, but to understand his concepts and find other ways of articulating them or teaching them or whatever. And at first, most of my speeches and seminars were quoting, Gerald said this and Donald said this and Chad said this and so forth, which is fine. Heck, it's never going to be out of fashion saying, love thy neighbor as thyself. Not my own words, but kind of hard to improve on, right? So that's how it started. And then as I started to master each of these categories in sales or in leadership or interpersonal communication or self-development, then I would find examples, because I spend a lot of time reflecting. What does that mean to me? How does that apply to the rest of my life? I don't want to just learn words. I don't want to just understand a concept like a mathematical formula. I want to be able to organically apply it to every aspect of my life.
Mm-hmm.
If I learn math, I want to know how it relates to the keyboard on my guitar, the fretboard. The way I think about these concepts is I reflect on it and I think about examples in my life, like I told you about apologizing to my son earlier.
Right.
And those examples are everywhere. I just didn't realize it at the time. So I've become a very skilled storyteller. I've had people tell me that I'm one of the best storytellers they've ever met, which is a huge compliment. I don't know how many they've met, but I do take pride in my ability to be able to tell a story. So if you, Chad, were to say to me, hey, Jim, let's take the concept of think of the result instead of only the process. Give me an example. I would say, well, give me a scenario. And well, let me do that. I'll throw it over to you. There's the concept. Think of the result instead of the process. Come up with a scenario. Doesn't have to relate to me. It could be anything, but put me into that scenario and I'll show you what I would do. Okay. Anybody? I'm ready.
He's asking, Chad. I'm gonna point back to you.
So just to confirm, the question is, give me a scenario of a challenge?
Just put me in a situation, a challenge of some sort, and I'll tell you how I would think about it using the concept that I mentioned, which was think of the result, not just the process.
Beautiful. So possibly another question I was going to ask you, but maybe it's the perfect segue to that question. I want to strengthen my leadership capabilities. What does it take to become a great leader? What can I do to become a greater leader?
Gotcha. First thing to think about is, what is leadership? In other words, go right to the base, the bedrock of whatever you're thinking about. Mm-hmm. So what is leader? What does it mean to lead? To lead, to guide others, to get others to take action, to achieve a desired result, or to get people to behave in ways that are consistent with what you want. Okay, so let's say that's leadership. Leadership is influencing people to enlist them in attaining a result of some sort. So if we agree that's what leadership is about, then why would I want to lead others? Well, I don't know. There are things I want to do, okay? Or things I want to get done. All right, fine. What would make them want to do it? Well, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. See, most people think of motivation as one word. It's not, it's two. And the first word's motive. The second word's action. Without a motive, the action's just random behavior. Without action, the motive is just fantasy. It's a daydream. So motive activated is what motivation's about. How do you become a leader? Focus on motives. Well, what do you, let's say I want to give you a motive. Motives don't come from outside. Motives live inside. If I want to motivate another person, I got to find out what his or her motives are. What do they want in their life, in their world, in their feelings, in their situation? And how can I connect the action or result that I want to the motive they already had before they came to work today?
Hmm.
Do they want more self-respect? Do they want more money? Do they want more joy? Do they want more capabilities, to develop skills that open new doors for them? So I think of what I want in terms of, what does this mean to them? How can I make it relevant to them and then make it easier for them to take the action? Because if I ask you to do something that's really complex, you may delay doing it a long time. If I ask you to do something and I say the first step is open this box, and I hand you the box and it's already got the ribbon cut on it so you can open it, you're going to open the box. So that's what leadership's about. And to become a better leader, think of them and what they want, and then think of the result you want, and then back up through that process to what you're going to say.
It's
Excellent.
fabulous.
Excellent. That's an excellent process. So as we wrap this up, Jim, there's so much that you've just laid out here, and things that you've said, and
I just want to hug all you guys. I'm enjoying this. I'm serious. If we were in the same room, I'd say, let's have a group hug. This is great.
Exactly. Exactly. So just the last thing I want to ask you here, or bring up, and I always ask this of anybody I talk to, and it's, what's the one thing that you would recommend to someone getting started in their career, especially now going into 2021, with everything that we have behind us, everything, all the new possibilities of new ways of working that we have in front of us? What's one piece of advice you would provide?
I would say.
Before you answer that question,
okay, go ahead, Don.
I have a recommendation.
Okay.
I recommend that you play something on that guitar when we're going out too. Okay, that's all.
Okay, I'll
do the barbecue song.
Yeah, I could do that. Thank you. The thing, see, it goes back to what I was saying to Chad a moment ago, and that is to start with the end in mind. So you're new in your career. You're starting out in the COVID world, right? So there are more limitations than previous generations have had on them in many ways. While at the same time, there are more resources than any generation in history has ever had available to them, especially when you multiply that by the possibilities through the internet, right? So there are fortunes that are going to be made out of this. If you think back to the Great Depression in the 1920s and 30s, coming out of that, some people became multimillionaires, world-influencing successes. Other people, most other people were absolutely devastated by it. It was a horrible, horrible experience for many people. So even if you're not affected physically by the health threats of the COVID era, you're certainly affected by all of the restrictions. Mm-hmm. My wife and I moved from California after 37 years out there to here in Austin, Texas, which we love very much. Just mostly because it's a more free environment without all the California restrictions, which are pretty much at the maximum among states, New York and California sharing that. And the prices are cheaper in Austin. So we're living quite well on a smaller budget, and that's great. But think in terms of the person you want to be. Think like an oak while you're an acorn. Once you're an oak, that'll be the way you think anyway. Right. So the most important time to think about you as the future you is right now. And to ask yourself, how would that person do the things I'm about to do? And when you look at a job, let's say you're going after a job for survival. You don't care what the job is. Cleaning toilets. If they'll pay you regularly, you'll take it on, whatever it happens to be. Approach every job as a skill practice. Do you want practice cleaning toilets? No. You want practice in providing a service for pay. How can you do it more efficiently? How can you do it in a more healthy manner? How can you do it more cleanly? How can you make it more pleasing to be able to do it, and less disgusting? How can you get more clients by spinning the referrals from this one. How can you, so learn skills wherever you are. I unloaded trucks and boxcars. I reported to people that weren't making $10 an hour and had no clue how to be a leader or manage other people. They were just, tell them to do it and kick their butt if they don't. So I was managed that way by many people. I used to have to, at night, because I didn't have a car, couldn't afford one, after work at the warehouse, I would have to walk alone through the ghetto in the east end of Little Rock, Arkansas, to my friend's dad's grocery store where he worked and get a ride home from him in his car. And it was scary because I'd encountered gangs and all kinds of scary people. And I had to learn to make my way through that without getting harmed. Right. So learn, well, it's like my boss, Clifford, forgotten his last name, but Clifford Clark. Yeah. Not a famous person, just the guy that was managing me at the warehouse. He said, Jim, I'm going to start giving you harder jobs. I said, wait, what? That's not fair. He said, yeah, it is. He said, you're going soon to basic training in the Army and you are not in good shape. You're strong, you can lift things, but you're not in good physical shape yet. So I'm going to give you harder work. And I want you not to feel like I'm being mean to you. I'm just going to help you get in better shape. So when you get to basic training, it's not going to destroy you. And I embraced the harder work. So that's the whole point. Think of the effect that you need, the skills you'll need, the person you'll need to be, and start behaving right here, right now, that way.
Awesome.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Let's hear this song that you got for us.
Okay. Pardon me for stepping off camera for a second.
Great advice. Wow.
Yeah.
Learned a lot.
See my nice little Gibson Hummingbird here?
Oh, that's nice, man.
I love this guitar. It's like my Martin D18 I used to have.
Is that a Gibson or a Martin?
Yeah, it's a Gibson. Yep.
I used to have that guitar. It's an awesome guitar.
And Glenn Campbell played this guitar, my guitar.
Wow.
One time I was at the Thousand Oaks Art Festival in California, and I had been performing. And when I got off the stage, I was walking through the art booths with all the white tents, and I saw the art booth of the actress Jane Seymour.
Yeah. And
she's a painter. And I'd met her before at some charity functions. And so I walked over and said hi. And she said, hey, Jim, have you met Glenn Campbell? Well, that's my guitar hero. I grew up in Arkansas. I mean, gentle on my mind, Glenn Campbell, good heavens. Oh my God, please introduce me. So there he was. And I went over and we started talking about Arkansas. And then people came up to get photos made with him. And I said, well, you should have a guitar. And I handed him this and he started playing it. And he was playing Bob Dylan's Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. So I started singing it and he nodded to me to continue. And we sang a duet. He was singing harmony to me. And Jane Seymour was filming it on her iPhone.
Awesome.
Oh my God. What an honor.
You never know.
What I'm going to play for you right now is going to be his, not mine. It's knowing that your door is always open and your path is free to walk. That makes me tend to leave my sleeping bag rolled up and stashed behind your couch. And it's knowing I'm not shackled by forgotten words and bonds and the ink stains that have dried upon some line. That keeps you on the back roads by the rivers of my memory, keeps you ever gentle on my mind. Though the wheat fields and the clotheslines and the junkyards and the highways come between us, some other woman crying to her mother 'cause she turned and I was gone. Well, I still might run in silence, tears of joy might stain my face, summer sun might burn me till I'm blind, but not to where I cannot see you walking on the back roads like the rivers flowing gentle on my mind. I dip my cup of soup back from the gurgling, crackling cauldron in some train yard. My beard a roughening coal pile and a dirty hat pulled low across my face. Through cupped hands run a tin can, I pretend I hold you to my breast and find that you're waving from the back roads by the rivers of my memory, ever smiling, ever gentle on my mind.
Beautiful.
Excellent. Excellent.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, thank you so much, man, for gracing us with your music,
Thank
your
you.
words of wisdom, your insight. And I'm telling you, when I get to be 74, if I could be half of what you are right now, I'd be really good. I'd be like really doing really well. You know,
That's very generous of you. I appreciate that very much. And I feel like I've got 3 very good new friends, and I look forward to times with all of you.
Thank
Well,
you.
very good, very good.
All right.
And if you want to know more about Jim, go to his website, Jim Cathcart.
No, it's just my last name,
Yeah, that's right.
Cathcart.com.
It's
Or look me up on
Cathcart.com.
any social media. You know, it just JimCathcart. And one of the things that I do in coaching people to do a grand reopening or a startup, you know, I take on individual clients or entire companies that I'm with for up to a year. So if anyone wants that, just drop me an email, and I'm happy to chat with you about it and explain how that works. So thank
Excellent.
you, guys.
Thank
Make it a
you.
great holiday season too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Take care.
Happy holidays, everyone. Okay.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Awesome.